Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakah Kodash, Barakata. First and foremost, I want to give all praises and infinite honors to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone that rule well, and peace and salutations to Yahakim out there pushing this word in truth and sincerity. May you brothers endure until the end. This is the brother Raya with another video, and I'm going to start it off with Luke chapter 10, verse 24. For I tell you, that many prophets and kings have desired to see those things which ye see and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear and have not heard them. And that definitely rings true in these last seconds of these last days, because if you're in the spirit, you can see these major prophecies starting to come to their fulfillment, and that should have you brothers exuberant, ecstatic, and such, because this is just more of an indication that this is the truth, and that our captivity is about to end, and that we're about to get into our rulership and eternal kingdom. I've got an article and a few scriptures to prove that point. And I'm going to be using an article from strategicculture.org titled, Brussels Rises in Revolt Against Washington, a Turning Point in the U.S.-European Relationship. And what does that sound like? Those 10 horns on the beast hating that whore that rides upon the beast. The May 16th, 17th EU Western Balkan Summit did address the problems of integration, but it was eclipsed by another issue. The meeting turned out to be a landmark event that will go down in history as the day Europe united to openly defy the US. The EU will neither review the Iran nuclear deal nor join the sanctions against Tehran that have been reintroduced and even intensified by America. Washington's unilateral withdrawal from the JCPOA was the last straw, forcing the collapse of Western unity. The Europeans found themselves up against a wall. There is no point in discussing further integration or any other matter if the EU cannot protect its own members, but now it can. President Trump has his own reasons to shred the Iran deal, but he needs Europe to strong-arm Tehran into signing a better agreement. Were it to do so, the U.S. administration would make it look like a big victory. Washington does not shy away from threatening its allies with punitive measures, but the EU is standing tall, deepening the rift. As European Council President Donald Tusk put it, with friends like Trump, who needs enemies? According to him, the U.S. president has rid Europe of all illusions. And that brings me to my next precept in Daniel chapter 7. I'm going to start at verse 19. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet. And this fourth beast is that reincarnated Roman Empire, which is NATO and the European Union. Verse 20, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, that little horn, which is a part of NATO, the United States, and before whom 3 fell, which is Britain, France, and Spain, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things. And those very great things are the blasphemies that the U.S. pushes onto the world, such as that the Bible's not true, that the people of the Bible are so-called white people, democracy, homosexuality, transgenderism, feminism, just complete madness. And we're seeing the fruits of their labors. This whole world's been turned upside down, where they call evil good and good evil. It's just under the vibration of that Aleister Crowley do as thou wilt spirit, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And who's that member of NATO that's always bullying around NATO and the European Union? The United States. And just think with what we just read in that article, it's the United States and Trump trying to bully the Europeans into leaving the Iranian nuclear deal like the U.S. has. But as we're seeing, the Europeans are growing a backbone. Mr. Tusk wants Europe to stick to our guns against new U.S. policies. Jean-Claude Juncker, the head of the EU Commission, believes that Europe must take America's place as global leader because Washington has turned its back on its allies. Washington no longer wants to cooperate. It is turning away from friendly relations with ferocity. Mr. Juncker thinks the time is ripe for Europe to replace the United States, which, Slovakia, as an international actor, has lost vigor. It would have been unthinkable not long ago for a top EU official to say such things and challenge the U.S. global leadership. Now the unthinkable has become reality. The process of shifting away from America does not boil down to just words of indignation and open defiance. Plans are underway to take practical steps. For instance, the EU is to ditch the use of the US currency in its payments for Iranian oil, and that's not saying that they're ditching the US dollar outright. That's very important because this goes to show the defiance of the Europeans and going behind the backs of the US and planning on paying for Iranian oil in the euro and not the dollar. And also, with the U.S. leaving the Iranian nuclear deal, the importance of the petro yuan has increased. But in the end, it's all just to lead towards the implementation of that RFID microchip, which is the mark of the beast. It can be done. Russia and Iran have already launched an oil for goods exchange program in order to leave the greenback behind. The bloc plans to activate a 1996 law, the blocking statute, which bans European businesses from compliance with U.S. sanctions on Iran. The legislation protects against the effects of an extraterritorial application of legislation adopted by a third country. The EU-Iran discussions have already been held, and it is America's closest ally who is to deal the first powerful blow against U.S. global dominance. This is a demonstration of the no retreat, no surrender spirit before the not yet unleashed war is in full swing. True, this applies to only a relatively small sector of business activities, and Iran's $400 billion market can't be compared to the $18 trillion U.S. market. But the important factor here is the show of political will to stand up to America's challenge. This rift is taking place amid a looming trade war over aluminum and steel, the U.S. withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accords, the relocation of the embassy to Jerusalem with no regards to their allies' opinions, and the controversy over Europe's NATO spending. And with those aluminum and steel tariffs, the U.S. has given the European Union an exemption from it until June 1st, and with the U.S. trying to push the Europeans to leave the Iranian nuclear deal, you can see how they can use this as leverage to get them to do it. On May 15th, the EU defense heads gathered at a meeting of the European Union Military Committee to discuss deeper integration and an independent defense policy, which envisages greater efficiency to reduce expenditures, given the US's demands to increase those outlays under the auspices of NATO. The PESCO agreement is the backbone of the EU defense policy, and it's purely European. Sandra Oudkirk, U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Energy, has just threatened to sanction the Europeans if they continue with the Nord Stream 2 pipeline project to bring gas in from Russia across the Baltic Sea. That country is also seen by the U.S. as an adversary, and its approach is by and large the same: to issue orders for Europe to adopt a confrontational policy, doing as it is told without asking too many questions, whose look was more stout than his fellows. Iran and Nord Stream 2 unite Moscow and Brussels in their opposition to this dictate. On May 17th, Iran signed a provisional free trade zone agreement with a Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union that seeks to increase the current levels of trade, valued at $2.7 billion. The deal lowers or abolishes customs duties. It also establishes a 3-year process for reaching a permanent trade agreement. If Iran becomes a member of the group, it would expand its economic horizons beyond the Middle Eastern region. So Europe and Russia are in the same boat, both holding talks with Iran on economic cooperation. Salakia, brothers. President Trump has just instructed Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to prepare a list of new sanctions against the Russian Federation for its alleged violations of the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces INF Treaty. This is the agreement the U.S. has so egregiously and openly breached. But nobody in Europe has announced that they want U.S. nuclear-tipped intermediate-range weapons on their territory that will be a target for a potential retaliatory strike by Russia. It's an example of yet another European problem with having the decision-making process located in Washington. If Europe is resolved to fend off U.S. attempts to dictate its policy on Iran, why should it reconcile itself to the pressure to keep the sanctions against Russia intact? May 17th marked a turning point in U.S.-European relationship. Slovakia. Europeans join ranks to resist a policy that encroaches on their right to decide their own fate. It's Europe, not the US, Slovakia, who is negatively affected by the punitive measures, creating deep divisions within the EU at a time when the group is faced with many problems. The time is right for Brussels to stop this sanctions counter sanctions mayhem and stake out its own independent policies on Russia, Iran, defense, and other issues that will protect the European Union, not US national interests. May 17th is the day the revolt started, and there is no going back. Europe has said goodbye to transatlantic unity. It looks like it has had enough. And this is beautiful, brothers, because like I said earlier, we're starting to see the fulfillment of these major prophecies. And that brings me to Revelation chapter 17, verse 16, and the 10 horns. And the 10 horns are the first common markets of the European Economic Community, or the European Union, established around 1958. They are Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Greece, Spain, and Portugal, which are one because Portugal comes out of Spain. Think historically like Hispania. England and Ireland, also one again because Ireland comes out of England. That's just these devils trying to be slick and offset prophecy. And West Germany, which is now just Germany today, which thou sawest upon the beast, and that beast is NATO. These shall hate the whore, and that whore is the United States, that virgin daughter of Babylon, Babylon the Great, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And that's when these Europeans are going to turn against the U.S. during World War III and shoot their nukes over to the U.S., along with the U.S.'s enemies such as Russia and China shooting their nukes over here, turning this place into the lake of fire. Brothers, it's just beautiful. These prophecies are truth. They're the living waters. And I'll close it off with Obadiah 7. All the men of thy confederacy, and a confederacy is an alliance, have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee, which we're seeing now with the Europeans starting to go behind the U.S.'s back and defy U.S. policy and dictates on them, and prevailed against thee, which, like I just said, they will when they turn against the U.S. and shoot their nukes over here. They that eat thy bread, such as money paid for NATO, have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. So, brothers, we're just getting closer and closer to the end of this thing. Just stay strong and keep pushing these videos. And with this video, I hope you brothers were edified. Ababa Ball, Kwam Yasharala. Until next time, Shalom.